Okay, so we went ahead and got all of our underlayment fastened down, and we are ready to start our shingling process. We got our starter strip rolled out and fastened into place, and I got 2 shingles already fastened. I wanted to show you a few things before we get started here. So if remember, we had the rollout starter shingle. If we had the tab starter shingles, we'd have one piece like this and one piece like this. It just wouldn't have the decoration of the architectural shingles on it. So you can see we have a seam coming down here. If we had those types of starter strips, when we started our shingling process, if we had a full sheet here, we would want to make sure that we wouldn't overlap, or we wouldn't line up with this seam. So what I mean by that, instead of starting a shingle right on the corner here and lining up with our seam, see we have 2 seams lining up here, we'd want to start back at least 6 inches. So when we lay our next full sheet over this, it overlaps this seam here. But since we have that rollout starter strip, we don't have to worry about that. It's one seamless piece of starter strip, and we can go ahead and just start with a full sheet. One thing to note, whenever you have shingles that you haven't used before, you should do a quick read on the back of the bundle, just to figure out where you should be nailing and how many nails per sheet you should do. I know some manufacturers recommend 5 nails and some manufacturers recommend 6 nails. So we have Timberline here, and this manufacturer recommends doing 5 nails for every full sheet. So the second thing to note, usually every manufacturer has a line on their shingles that isn't to line up the next shingle. That's a guideline for you to put your nails in. That kind of does 2 things. One, on the back of each shingle there's a tar strip. That's what keeps that shingle, this next row of shingles, from coming up. That tar strip is also located right over these nails, and it helps to seal those nails just a little bit. It also puts, if you can look on the side here, this row covers that row of nails up real nicely. Also, if you nail in the strip right above, you're also getting the top of the shingle underneath. So you're really getting 2 rows of nails in each shingle. So it's really important to make sure you get those nails right on that manufacturer suggested line. Okay, so I got the first 2 shingles in place. And basically what I did, again, since we had that seamless starter strip, I just started right in the corner. We don't have to worry about any seams in this first row. And I lined it right up flush with the front of the drip edge. Ran the first 2. The second one, I started to run into the dormer a little bit, so I just went ahead and notched out. And we're gonna do the same thing on this next piece here. So whenever possible, I don't like to use tape measures, just because you can always read the tape measure just a little bit wrong and screw up. So one fail-safe way of doing it is to just slide your shingle right up next to the edge of your dormer. And you can take your knife and just make a little slit where you want to cut. And then you can bring it up tight to your seam here, and then go on your edge here and make a little slit. And then you basically connect the dots. So I'm gonna flip the shingle over. Whenever you are cutting shingles, make sure you never cut on your roof surface, especially your ice and water. If your blade goes a little too far, you'll go through that membrane and you'll basically make a hole, and it defeats the purpose of having that membrane there. So you'll always want to cut on a surface that doesn't matter if you go through a little bit. So I'm gonna cut here. Gonna make sure I'm on the top part of the shingle, and then slice right along that top part there. This doesn't have to be perfect because it's gonna get covered up. This has to be close. And we'll throw that off there. And then we should have a perfect fit without having to measure, which we do. So we're gonna take a roofing nail now. Now when you first nail along a new sheet here, there's two things you wanna look out for. One, you wanna make sure you have a nice tight seam. If your shingles are running a little bit crooked, you might have a tight seam on the bottom, but you might have a little bit of a gap on top. That's the first telltale sign that you're not running straight. The second thing you want to pay attention to is where you put your nail. So I'm going to get it nice and flush along the edge. We have a nice tight seam, so we're still running straight. And I want to focus on where I put this first nail. I don't want to put it right up right up tight against this edge. Basically just because you're not getting much of the meat of the shingle, and any wind that comes through here, it'll rip that edge right off. So you want to make sure you come in inch or two. I think the manufacturer suggests 2 inches. Again, make sure you're right on that line. Drive your first nail. And then you can come to the other edge. Again, make sure you're flush again. Take another nail and do the same on the other edge. So with 5 nails, it's pretty easy. You want to get your nails equally spaced apart. You don't want to put 2 really close together here, 2 really close together here, and 1 in the middle. It just doesn't hold the shingle properly. So you want to get those nails equally spaced, and without having to measure, you can just split the distance once in the middle, and then split both of those distances, and that'll be your 5 nails. And now they're equally spaced. So when driving your roofing nails, you want to make sure that you get your nail in there perfectly straight. So right now I'm going perpendicular to the roof. What you don't want to do is drive it perpendicular to the ground. I'll do an example here if you want to get a close-up. Let's come over here. It's not going to matter because I'm going to cover this up anyway. But if I was to nail perpendicular to the ground, as I drive that in, basically the back of the head of the nail is hitting that shingle now, and the front is up. So if I left it like that, that would leave a protrusion from the roof, and as this next shingle lays down, basically that'll poke through the shingle. Or if I drive it home, now I've basically poked through the back of this, the back of the nail poked through that shingle, and now you've basically just made a hole in your shingle. So you want to make sure you get that nail perpendicular to the roof line. That way that nail head sits flush and holds that shingle nice and tight. All right, so with this first row here, you would continue on out to the edge of the roof and get that first row done. And then what I like to do is snap a line. We've done a lot of work to get this fascia board straight, but now that we've put this drip edge on, sometimes you get a little tighter in some spots and a little bit further away in others, so you're not perfectly straight. So what I like to do is snap a chalk line from end to end and follow that for the first line. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this rest of this first row laid out, and then I'll show you how to snap that line. Okay, so we went ahead and got on our entire first row of shingles here, and now we're gonna go ahead and snap that guideline with the chalk line. So there's 2 things that we should think about when laying out this chalk line. The first thing is the straightness of our fascia and our drip edge here. We know we're pretty straight, so there isn't gonna be too much correction taking any curvature out of this drip edge. But the second thing we want to think about is how our shingles are going to end up at the top of the roof. So basically what we're doing with this chalk line is making a perfectly straight line for our shingles to go to reference off of. So then if we are very careful with laying the rest of our shingles out, we should be perfectly straight at the top of the roof. So an older roof, if you are tearing off some old shingles and replacing some new, a lot of times the roof has racked over the years and you're not perfectly straight. Sometimes the ridge is a little bowy, but the bigger problem is a lot of times the roof is racked and you just don't have a perfect rectangle anymore. So sometimes maybe one side of the roof you'll have a little bit more surface area to cover, and then the other side of the roof you're a little bit less. So the thing about roofing is trying to hide any of those irregular shapes. So you don't have to necessarily be going straight across the front of the roof because you're not going to see that front very much. But from the road, what you're going to see is that very top along the ridge. And you want to try to get that as straight as possible, so when your cap shingles overlap, you'll have a nice straight reveal. What you notice whenever you have crooked shingles is whenever that reveal isn't the same, it doesn't look very well or very good. So what we're going to do now is what you would normally do is take a measurement from the peak, and normally you'd have another person on this part of the tape measure go up to the peak. They would hold it right at the peak, and what you want to do is measure to the top or the bottom of the next row. So the way these shingles work is they would lay over top here, and you line it up with this this groove here on the top of the architectural part of the shingle. So you would have somebody up there at the top, they would hold right at 0, and you'd take a measurement. Looks like we have about 73.5. I already measured this earlier before we put the tar paper on, so I know we're at about 73.5. You would also go on the other end, do the same thing, measure from the peak down, and see how big of a difference there is. There's been some roofs where I've done that are anywhere from 2 to 3 inches different. So this is kind of that spot that you can correct it. Let's say we were a few inches different. What you would do is you'd find your high point. Let's say this was 76, and you would measure down, let's add 3 inches then. So you'd go down 79 and you would overlap this. Then you would go to the other side and subtract those 3 inches and actually go right at 76. That way you have 76 inches all the way across. And as you work up your way up the roof, you would have a nice straight reveal at the top. So luckily with this roof, we just built it. We know it's pretty straight. Our measurements are equal. So what I'm gonna do is I won't have to figure in any of that math with the ridge. I know we're gonna come out pretty straight. All I'm gonna do is hang down from this groove here a little bit. So our reveal is 5 3/4. I want to hang down about a 1/2 inch, so I'm just going to make a mark at 5 1/4, which I've already done. I've done that on the other side, and we're just going to take a chalk line here and go ahead and snap a line. Going to hook on this end. Going to hold on the 5 1/4 here. Right here, and I'm going to snap a line. All right, so that's a pretty faint line. I can see it. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but I can tell. Looks like our fascia or our drip edge here has bowed out just a little tiny bit. So this is going to correct it. So I'm down about a 1/4 inch from our reveal line here. But if I go towards the middle, right here, looks like our chalk line went right on that reveal mark. So we did have a little bit of curvature with our drip edge, and now this reference line is going to take out that irregular line here. So now what I can do is I can start with my shingling process. This first row I'm going to stick tight to that chalk line. And then every row after that, I will go with that regular ridge in the shingle for my reference point. So to get started after our first row of shingles here, we want to kind of build what's called a stair pattern. And what I've done here is I've actually pre-cut some shingles. And what's gonna happen is I'm gonna lay these out, get them lined up. And this isn't perfect, I'm just showing you here. And now I've created a stairs of overlaps here. The manufacturer recommends having at least 6 inches of overhang. I do 8, not because of the added benefit of the overhang, but these shingles, a full tab, if you take one, is about 40 inches. So if you go every 8 inches, we got about 39 and a half. You basically are cutting 2 prep shingles at once. So if you come back and cut 8 inches, you have an 8-inch piece and then the, was it 32-inch piece. And basically, as you cut one set, you actually have another set already cut for you. It's just a faster way of doing every 8 inches. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take my first pre-cut here, and I've basically just taken 8 inches off this shingle, and I'm gonna line it up here. Again, this first row, I'm not gonna go to that ridge, I'm gonna go right on my chalk line. And it looks like I'm pretty good here. And I'm gonna go ahead and nail off this shingle. Again, making sure we're right on that nail line, and we're coming in about 2 inches. Now, since I took some off this shingle, we don't need to go 5 nails, we'll just go 4. And the next one probably just 3. But remember, every full sheet needs 5 nails. All right, so now I'm gonna take my next pre-cut. Now, I don't have the chalk line on this one, so what I'm gonna do, since we have that first row, should be technically straight, I'm gonna line this next row up with that ridge on this architectural part of the shingle. So it looks like we're pretty good. We'll drive a nail. And again, on this edge over here, all I'm doing is making sure that edge of the shingle is flush with our drip edge. Now I'm going to do this last pre-cut. Line it up with the ridge, make sure it's flush, and nail it off. So on these smaller shingles here, I don't like to put any less than 3 nails in a shingle. So even though they seem pretty close together, I'll still put 3. All right, so now you can see we've started with a full shingle and we have that step going back every 8 inches. So you might wonder why we kind of do it like this. It's basically purely for speed of roofing. If theoretically you could do a full sheet, then a half sheet, then a full sheet and a half sheet. But if you do a stair pattern like this, you're working in one area without having to move across the roof. If you did a full sheet, half sheet every time, you would basically just be doing 2 rows at once. Where if you do a stair pattern like this, you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, and after you get another shingle 5, you can basically do 5 rows all at once. And you minimize how many times you move back and forth over the roof. So what I'm going to do next is continue this stair pattern here. So now you can see what's happening as I put this next row on. covering up this previous row's seam with a shingle. So behind here we have that starter strip. There isn't a seam, so water will run off this shingle. If it hits this seam, it doesn't matter because there's that starter strip behind it. Then same thing with this, this seam here. If water comes off of this next shingle up here and runs onto this seam, it won't matter because there's a full shingle behind it. So you want to make sure those seams are nice and staggered. So looks like I have a little bit of a obstacle here with the dormer. So just like with the previous row, I'll line it up, take my knife and make a little notch of where I need to cut it, which is right on that groove of the architectural part. And then I'll line it up going this way and make a mark here and cut out this little corner. So if you have some volunteers that are kind of standing around, one really good thing to have them do is to go ahead and make some more pre-cuts for you. So you can show them how to subtract that 8, 16, 24, 32 on each shingle. But what I would advise you to do is, like, don't tell them to go cut a whole bunch, because what they'll do is they'll just keep cutting and go through all your shingles, and all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of cut shingles that you don't need and you've wasted a bunch. So do a little bit of math. It looks like if you take a measurement here, looks like 4 rows takes up about 30 inches. So measure this whole area. We'll just estimate about 90 inches. So 30, that's about 3 more rows. So you can have them go cut 3 more sets of pre-cuts, and just tell them how many to cut, and then they won't cut too many. And that'll keep them busy for a little bit. Okay, so we have our shingle here. And again, we're back down to our first row. So we want to make sure we're nice and lined up with that chalk line. Go ahead and nail. Make sure we're on our chalk line over here. And then again, we want to make sure we're nice and tight on this seam. If we were crooked, we'd have a little bit of a peak here and an open spot at the top. So we don't want that. Make sure we're on our line. Nice tight seam. Come over here and nail off this corner. So after we get this shingle in place, we're at a point now where we need to start thinking about flashing with metal flashing here on this dormer. So we'll get this guy nailed off real quick. And I'll explain the process of flashing. All right.